right. Welcome you all to another episode of the Cosmic Matrix podcast. Today with your host, Bernhard Guenther. And my very, very special guest today is my good friend, Benny Wills. I welcome you, Benny, finally.
Thank you, Bernhard. It's an honor and it's good to speak to you. It's been way too long.
It's been way too long. Like Benny and I, we go back a long time ago. You used to live here in the belly of the beast, Los Angeles. And you also were still part of Joy Camp, right? That's been going on more or less. And we've spent a lot of time as friends together. And you also organizing the regeneration events, which I'm also very grateful for you. 2 events. So we're speaking at both of these events. It was really great, like a community and bringing different aspects to this kind of conference. And you were also on one of the retreats I was hosting with Fred a few years ago, which was quite an intense experience. I remember we did a podcast on your channel about it. Mm-hmm. And I remember back then you started getting into something new you've been developing, and it's beautiful. You have a really amazing talent for poetry or, spoken word, so to speak, very conscious, very hard-hitting, and I think you just started your own YouTube channel around that as well. Is that correct? Maybe you can let the listeners
just about a year ago, I branched away from Joy Camp and started my own personal channel, and so far so good.
Yeah. I saw you recently was it? I think maybe some older pieces uploading the white guilt piece and the racism division piece. Was it?
Yes. Yeah. I just put because I'm white. I wrote maybe a year ago, and I performed that at the Anarchadelphia conference in September, and I felt like it was a good time to make it public.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that would be an understatement. Yes.
Yeah.
So, man, let's dive into it. What's going on in the world right now? It's pretty crazy. It's also an understatement. Who would have known what's been happening since it started all with this COVID, and then all of a sudden this other thing happened with George Floyd and the protests and the riots, and it seems they're all very much connected, right? So there's something else emerging, and this weird thing which I also start trying to wrap my head around, that apparently the left turns to be out the full-on New World Order, totalitarian force. And there's some sort of splitting happening, right? The left versus right and whatnot. And even within the truth community, we can see that as well happening. And it's all very confusing because, none of what's happening I could possibly predict on some level. Yes, fine, it's obvious in retrospect, right? Mm-hmm. But at the same time, holy shit, this is just almost there's a certain desperation behind the Matrix forces to trying to lock us down.
That's what it feels like. Yeah, it feels like maybe their plan was not moving as quickly as they had hoped. So now they're just at full throttle in 2020. Yeah. It's gone. They just put the pedal to the metal and pulling out all the stops, and that's what we're experiencing. They're just doubling down.
Yeah. Now I feel like, we all know about this whole COVID pandemic stuff and all the issues around that. And that got completely thrown out of the water since the alleged killing, I have to say, of George Floyd happened. Who knows what truly happened? But it's been obviously used to create this uprising, the riots and all the looting, and even the violence and looting is even justified on the mainstream media, especially, again, I have to say, the leftist media. And I want to point out, both of us, we're not statist, right? No. We don't believe in government. We have been both speaking in Acapulco and all of that. Mm-hmm. We don't feed into the left-right paradigm. But you cannot ignore that there's something happening weirdly between the left and the right. That even like at this sense, the quote-unquote right, even I watched some Tucker on Fox News, he has more common sense from the mainstream media perspective than all the leftist media. And it seems, there is, it's kind of very confusing, I have to say, because I don't want to align with the side, but at the same time, even Trump is starting to make way more sense than I thought he would make. Right? So how's your view on that a little bit?
Yeah, well, I'm kind of in the same boat. I'm especially since moving up here to the Pacific Northwest and being probably my proximity to Northern Idaho, I've definitely realized that I have conservative values. Doesn't mean that I'm a Republican, but I have conservative values. I'm not progressive as far as political ideology goes. And it's very possible that I'm being played like everybody else. And maybe Trump is part of this Hegelian dialectic, left versus right, intentional paradigm division that keeps us fighting each other, and that I'm just, taking the bait. That said, he keeps doing things and saying things, and I'm like, I agree with that. I think that's a good thing. So I'm not holding Trump on a pedestal like he's the savior or anything, but I don't dislike him. Mm-hmm. And it's a weird place to be in, because if I were to say that, even if I'm, it's cool to talk to you about it because it's comfortable and I feel like we're on the same page. But since I'm so, I'm in the truth community, who are so anti-government, anti-anything establishment, anti-politics, all of it. If I were to say, I don't mind Trump right now, I would be attacked not only from my former friends from Los Angeles and from acting and from graduate school and college and all that, but also from truthers. So it's a weird position to be in, where I can't really tell many people that I'm actually not. I'm just open-minded. I'm observing. I'm paying attention to what Trump's saying and doing, and not just throwing him under the bus because I like some of the things I'm seeing and hearing.
Yeah. No, exactly. I can relate. I think a lot of it relates definitely people. Laura, my wife, she wrote a nice update on Facebook about TDS, the Trump derangement syndrome. So that's been definitely going on for the past few years, this very mechanical, reactive, just shadow negative projections by the left onto Trump because they literally hate him, right? Mm-hmm. There's just they cannot see anything good in this guy. He cannot possibly do anything right. They're only looking to put the man down, and they're not interested in truth. We see this even within the COVID. I was actually impressed. He put himself out there every single day in front of the press. And if you actually, I made an effort just to watch the raw, the press conference. He handled himself well. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Dealing with all the nonsense questions. And yes, he has his egoic character, right, in all of that. And, his character faults, which we all have to varying degrees, but I don't see him as this fascist psychopath he's being made out to be,
Yeah, agreed. And even those things that they catch that are sort of off the cuff, that aren't the more staged, or, there's moments they catch him saying things that aren't televised, that are more, like I said, off the cuff. And he's saying things that I agree with. Someone asked him about a mandatory vaccine, and he said they're not going to be mandatory. I was like, yeah, that's great. It's great to hear him say that. And he was saying it to a reporter who was asking him a question. It wasn't something that was televised on, MSNBC or something. It was just him answering a question, and the footage was looks like it from a phone. And it's like, this is exactly good. I'm glad that he's standing up against this.
Yeah. And even what is it called? Hydrochloroquine?
Hydrochloroquine, yeah.
Hydrochloroquine, that's even been proven in other countries that it actually worked, for COVID virus. Who knows how dangerous the virus is to begin with. Mm-hmm. But he was addressing, and then people, he wants people to drink bleach and all of this, completely exaggerated. I think, but the problem is what you alluded to is there's this extreme black and white thinking. Right? Either on the one side, you have Trump, the savior. He cannot do anything wrong. He's sent by Jesus to take out the cabal. Or he is the Antichrist, right? The absolute fascist and set up for the New World Order. And it's just, you mentioned Hegelian dialect, problem, reaction, solution. We're being completely played. But the more I looked into it, that's the problem, this whole black and white thing. And I see this similar, you and I have the same problem, quote unquote problem. I'm being attacked not only by mainstream, but by my quote unquote liberal friends, but by the truther community that I have gone off the deep end for acknowledging there's something maybe about Trump and even maybe about Q and this QAnon, right? So it's really I'm getting it from all sides, and I'm just I'm still trying to figure it out without jumping just on either side to extremes, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I don't know enough about the QAnon phenomenon to have a real formed opinion about it. So I'm curious. And of course, I'm an optimistic person, so I'm hopeful that it all proves to be something good, and that good things happen. So, again, that's also a thing I'm like shy to talk about, because people then jump to conclusions about me and that I'm a Q supporter, Trump supporter, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. But it's just because I'm hoping for the best. And a friend of mine pointed out, a friend of mine who does believe in Q, who's also an expert in the trivium, by the way, which I think is an interesting thing. So he's a guy who really focuses on grammar, logic, rhetoric, and he thinks that Q is legit. And he says, in response to all the people who say Q is a psyop, he's like, none of them would debate someone who's a Q expert, because they don't actually pay attention to what Q is saying. They just automatically assume it's a psyop, and then they write it off. Yeah. So they don't pay attention to the videos. They don't pay attention to the posts. They just are already so sold on it being absolute fiction and a trap that they don't know anything about it, other than the random, tweet here and there where someone will, highlight a certain post or whatever, but they won't debate the Q people, because they wouldn't be able to, because they don't have any context for what Q is actually saying or doing.
Yeah. It's very interesting that you brought that up, this guy into the trivium. If people don't understand trivium, it's the basics of critical thinking, grammar, logic, rhetoric, meaning put always your grammar before logic, meaning putting your research before conclusions, and rhetoric then present your understanding. And it's funny in the sense that you brought it up, because I have to look in the mirror myself, because I completely debunked Q at first as a psyop earlier this year, and all based on logical fallacies, because I didn't do any research. I made assumptions, right? And based on my own triggers, right? Because I judged like QAnons, all these just white, like American gun toting Republicans, this cult and whatnot. And I was just also cherry picking what you alluded to, like just even like I had already a bias. I wasn't even researching it objectively. I wanted it to be false, a psyop. So, I was just looking for whatever could be wrong. But interestingly, then at some point I got Tom Montag. I'm sure you're familiar with this research. I got him on the podcast in March. And he did a lot of research, and he laid it all out, and I experienced a disillusionment, because he just really showed me there's some absolute reality to it, just by applying basic critical thinking, applying the trivium, research and in depth, and not even just going to the drops. You really have to have a whole context understanding. And there are, many other people within the QAnon movement who wrote books about it, which also need to be read to understand. You have to really study it first before you can make a conclusion, right? Mm-hmm. So all of that, resulted me in looking in deeper, and I'm also in the process of writing an article more about it. But that's the key point. We can easily dismiss it and then challenge my own beliefs, similar to you. Like, what does it mean then all of a sudden there are good guys in the government? What do you mean? Government is, is all bad. It's all control. Nobody can give us freedom. But what I realized, similar to you in the sense of healthy optimism, the shift needs to happen in stages. What do we expect, right? Going straight from like, oh, government sucks, to like this utopian, anarchistic, non-statist, voluntaristic society, right?
Yeah, well, and like you said, there's some people who just who see everything as black and white, but it has to be more than that. I mean, it stands to reason that there will be people within the government, or people who are in high places of status within the military, wherever, that get exposed to the same corruption that you and I get exposed to. And they see it. I mean, they catch wind of things like the pedophilia that's rampant throughout all the pillars of control. And it stands to reason that those people would want to stop that, just like we want to stop that. So why is it really that outside the realm of possibility that people within the military and people like Donald Trump or others potentially would want to take a stand against those forces? It makes sense to me, whether or not Donald Trump is or is not that guy. It makes sense that someone like him or people like him would choose to use their platform of power and status to take a stand against that. Why not? Yeah. That's not an impossible thought.
Yeah, exactly. Unless you can, like, through research and applying logic, the trivium, prove it otherwise. Mm-hmm. Because here's the very fascinating thing. It's so funny that you brought up the trivium, because a good friend of mine also who has been following Q for a long time, and he gives a lot of validity, and he's definitely not the typical Trump supporter. at all. But he has said it's a psyop, it's contra-pro, and he's like, okay, I haven't seen no evidence. Can you prove it to me? So I'm like, okay, I'll prove it. And the deeper I delve, I realized I cannot prove it. I cannot debunk it that easily. And do you know? Are you familiar with David Whitehead?
I know the name.
He has his own podcast channel. He's from Canada. He does great work, especially with Michael Cera. And he recently came out with a video as well, a personal video about Q. And he made the same point. He was looking into it and he realized, it's not that easy to debunk Q once you look into it. You cannot just simply say it's a psyop just because of you think or your quote-unquote intuition tells you, which my quote-unquote intuition told me too, but it was based on my own bias and wishful thinking. When you really sincerely look into it, and understand also, I feel you have to educate yourself about what's happening politically to a degree, which I dismissed with the whole Obamagate, what is being uncovered there, because it is some sort of weird chess game where the players need to be, you need to expose other things before you can go straight to the king and whatnot, right? So it is really, it's way more complex and nuanced and not that black and white.
Exactly. Nuanced is the key word. It's, we're left to really just sort through the details and the scraps. And there's definitely a battle for power. I mean, I think there's so much going on behind the scenes that we can only have glimpses of. And yeah, I don't know. I'm in an observer mode, and I'm not jumping to conclusions about anything yet. I'm just, staying on my toes. And also because the, if the negative forces, if the evil forces do win, it's pretty grim, and we have a real the uphill climb becomes even steeper. Yeah. So I'm really hoping for the best, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with hoping. I really do hope that Trump is on our side, and I hope the QAnon thing proves to be something that's legitimate. And I'm also keeping myself in check. I'm not just ignoring information that might counter that positivity or that optimistic outlook. But I do want to remain on the optimistic side because I'm newly married and I want to start a family, and, I want to, I am going to start a family, and I can't just think of this. I can't accept that the dystopian future Orwellian nightmare is an inevitability,
That's a very, go ahead.
Well, that's basically it. Yeah.
But that's a very important point that came to me as well, because I've been also discussing this topic with others on our forum and whatnot, and I see sometimes, especially in the quote-unquote conspiracy movement, so to speak, which we are in it as well, part of it.
Yeah.
But there's this very sometimes extreme doom and gloom negativity thinking, paranoid, it's to an extreme. Of all, even when you talk about vaccination, even 5G, chemtrails, it's to such an extreme, right? And then even now you see it this complete totalitarian new world order will come down. We're all screwed, and and Trump is the Antichrist. He's just setting us up, and it's so dark. It doesn't even for me, even from a spiritual perspective, it doesn't even make sense, because we are in a bigger transformation. There's something bigger happening, and what I see missing in a lot of this the conspiracy world is this vision, this more spiritual vision. And it's not about new age spiritual bypassing and all of that, because we need to still take self-responsibility. But there's something else emerging as well. Something good is happening, and we just don't know how it plays out, right? And I feel that actually it works exactly for these matrix forces to get ourselves in this doom and gloom, state of just, this is, oh my God, it's all coming down. We are fucked.
Exactly. I don't want to give them too much credit.
Yeah.
They're just human beings, as far as we can tell. They're just humans who have given over, who've sacrificed their care, as it were, their empathy. But they're still just people. And maybe they have a long game in mind. Maybe there is, this bloodline, lineage, passing of the wisdom, passing of the torch, control over humanity. But that doesn't mean that the average person like me can't snap out of it and wake up, and that the good can't overcome that. I mean, it's not an inevitability. I do think that they're overplaying their hand right now. And I think we have to celebrate the victories, not just say, well, yeah, but no, so we just exposed this. People are waking up because of this, and shine a light on a spotlight on the victories that we are experiencing in the last few months, which are many. I mean, they are just exposing themselves left and right, and people that I would not expect to be snapping out of their trances are beginning to question things. And the more they push on us, the more we push back. And I think that's undeniable and cause for hope.
Yeah. No, I agree absolutely. And even like when they are not, well, if they're just humans, it's to be questioned, like full on, soulless psychopaths, possessed by demonic entities. But the point is, you made a really point. They're trying to instill in our minds, even from a hyperdimensional perspective, which I know, a topic I cover as well. They try to instill the perception that they are more powerful than they actually are, right? And the Achilles heel, even from the esoteric perspective of 4D STS, like, evil psychopathic forces, is wishful thinking. A psychopath will never like give up and admit or remorse. They just fight until, even they know already that's the end, they would deny it. It's like complete wishful thinking. And they're going insane right now. On the poster thing, as you mentioned as well, a lot of stuff is being more exposed. It becomes more obvious. And more people are actually, quote unquote, waking up. I noticed that. There's a division, people falling for it, for the whole agenda. But quote unquote, regular people are waking up. I see it, who never considered the topics we have been talking about for over a decade. Mm-hmm. So there's something happening. It's interesting with Q too, because people say, don't understand. It's not just like Q, Trump is saving us. Even if you really research all the Q drops and whatnot, what they, or whoever Q is helping to bring awareness to certain topics, to ask questions, to bring it into collective, because the work is still up to us.
Totally. I mean, one of the, did you see that movie? I'm assuming you saw it, Out of Shadows, that came out maybe 6 weeks ago or something. Well, I thought it was really well done. I watched it twice, and I thought, anything that's really well produced and well edited is going to be more appealing for a viewer. And I thought, as far as, a breadcrumb to offer to somebody who is just starting to ask questions, or maybe to a friend or a family member who you want to get to think about something, it was a great piece. And for the most part, I think people really responded well to it. But I saw in the truth community, so many truthers just bashing this film for no reason, because it had a potentially pro QAnon aspect to it, because they focus on Liz Crokin or whatever, but they're so critical of it. And I'm thinking, guys, this is a victory. Like, can't we just say, accept that this is a good piece of film? Like, it's good that this was made. Better to have this than to not have it. Yeah. And yet they're so critical of it because they're not addressing the things the way that they would address them, or they're not including the right people, or not sourcing the right people, or whatever. It's just like, this is all wrong. We're not Siskel and Ebert here judging the quality of the documentary. It exists and it's a good thing. And it's just, it's just sad to see that, like you said earlier, the splintering of the truth community because of hubris and ego and opinion. Like, I think this and that, I think that's wrong, therefore no one should pay attention to that. And
to all these people who
doesn't get us anywhere.
All these nitpickers, please produce your own film. Address everything what you think should be in a film. There's
a lot of good stuff in that documentary. A lot.
Yeah, I agree.
And then another Hollywood guy.
Exactly. I mean, you can probably you've been in that scene to a certain degree, right? I mean, that's you literally like got yourself out of that swamp, right? People don't know that's how you grew up. You were a child actor, right?
I was. Yeah, and luckily I was never exposed to anything too dark. I mean, I just got firsthand experience in the business and got to see, first I got to experience what that empty desire, that dream can do to a person, and how empty it really is. And I can see what it was doing to all my friends, even the ones who were really successful, and how sort of subconscious it makes people and frenetic. And so I luckily didn't experience the real darkness, but I did experience just how artificial and ridiculous the whole business is.
Yeah, similar like that stuntman. I think the main guy who he was like living his dream, but they realized it's just all hollow. It's all based on lies and illusions. It's just nothing.
Yeah, and it was awesome. I thought it was really well done, and I really did not. It was just tiresome to see my peers try to discredit this documentary and nitpick it to pieces, and say it supports the QAnon narrative, even though I watched it twice. There's no mention of QAnon or Donald Trump in the film.
Yeah, and also, by the way, it's speaking of trivium, and it's a logical fallacy. Right? Yeah. Address the content, the information itself, not why you think it's associated whatever with whatever, right?
Exactly.
And yes, Q dropped link to that documentary for the record. But, another critique I saw, it's, this Christian undertone and, they're trying to sell the dogmatic Christian view and whatnot. And I see this also as a lot of criticism. And that was actually, honestly, at first a turnoff as well because of my trigger with dogmatic Christianity. But now I realize, no, this is also about embracing from a spiritual perspective the true Christ teachings, right? People have so much triggers when somebody because Q talks about God and all of this. I'm like, oh my God, this is, it's bad because it's Christianity. I'm like, no, there's the Q Christian teaching, there's a truth in it. And we see this, the way I see it right now. My wife, Laura, has helped me understand this better right now from this bigger picture perspective, the evolution of consciousness from an astrological perspective. The US is going through a rebirth. It's a Pluto return, right? So this is a huge transformation that happened at when the U.S. was born. So what we are experiencing is literally like a second civil war, so to speak. That's kind of brings everything out of the shadows. So it's there's a bigger process happening, and that's what I see a lot of people, especially in the truth community, again, don't see it, the bigger picture in light of the evolution of consciousness, and they're nitpicking. And I've experienced the same, the attacks I've received lately because of giving some credibility to Q and Trump. It's just this, but what about this? He supports 5G and da-da-da, and all this cherry picking. And yes, we also need to watch out not to fall into this. I can see this, maybe even the QAnon movement, people projected all these crazy savior projections on the man, which are also naive in itself, right? But acknowledging maybe there's something else. Maybe it's not that black and white, right? I think that's really something important to consider.
Yeah, it certainly doesn't seem like the left wants Donald Trump to get reelected. And maybe, and of course, there would be 10 people who would hear me say that and tell me why I'm wrong, and that's just the nature of being in the truth community. But as I'm just observing and paying attention, it seems like they really hate him. And he doesn't seem to be he's acting some role and that he's actually, when he comes off stage, he's out there laughing with Bill Clinton about how they're getting away with something. It certainly doesn't feel that way. And I was a professional actor, and I have 2 degrees in acting. I studied acting. I can tell when people are lying pretty well. And doesn't seem like I'm being played on that level. What Donald Trump is really about, I'm not, I don't know, but I don't think he's on the same team as Obama, Hillary Clinton, Bill Gates, etc. Yeah. Certainly, unless I'm completely being fooled, which is a possibility, but doesn't seem like it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Also, as I said, I could be completely wrong, and all of this turned out to be the mother of all psyops. But again, it's also acknowledging, to be honest, that we don't truly know, on a level, you can observe, make hypotheses. I'm still in depth of researching it right now. I lean more towards there's some validity about Q and Trump. There's something else, and I cannot just debunk it flat out as a psyop. I'm sorry. It's not possible.
Like I said, it stands to reason that there would be certain people who have power and influence who would want to stand up against satanic pedophilia and mandatory poison. It makes sense. Yeah. So I'm hoping that I'm right about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, man, I want to also shift into a little bit, you were the last in Acapulco, right? Doing MC. How
I was
that?
The master of ceremonies in Acapulco this year.
Who was speaking there back then at this?
This year, Ron Paul was the headliner again, and Freeway Rick Ross was one of their headliners, and Doug Casey, and a bunch of others. It was all right. I've been being honest. I think that in Acapulco, I love Acapulco. I've had a great experience there. I think it got a little too big for its britches. Yeah. And I think it's I think it needs to be reined back in. And I think Jeff would agree with me. Mm-hmm. So I'm not shy to say it, but it was fun. You know, I mean, I worked really hard. Being the MC didn't give me much of a chance to go to the beach or anything and hang out. But, you know.
Were you able to throw in your poetry in there though? Sure. No?
Yeah, well, it was great because at first I wasn't going to. I thought this is kind of ironic. Like, I'm really just going to be, why are they paying me just to be the guy who introduces speakers? But then the night before, someone was sick, so they had a slot and they gave me the opening slot basically. So I had the first like 15 or 20 minutes to myself. So I was like, all right, let's do it. And I liked, so I got to kick off the whole weekend essentially. So yeah, I did my thing to really start the whole conference and set the tone, which was cool.
Nice. Excellent. Nice. On that, I also want our listeners know, where can we find your poetry, or is it on YouTube or?
Well, yeah, I'm still figuring out my big game plan with what I'm doing with the poetry and my channel and what I'm doing next really in my life. But yeah, you can go to my YouTube channel to listen to me say a lot of my poems. I think I probably have about a third of them on there at this point, but I like to take the live performances that I do and then take individual poems from those performances and put them on the channel. So I think at this point, yeah, I have like a third of my poetry on there, and that's the best way to listen to them. As far as the text is concerned, I've been working with G. Edward Griffin, the author of The Creature from Jekyll Island, for the past couple of years. He's really been interested in publishing my book, and it's just been a slow process. So ball's in his court at the moment. We were supposed to have the book ready to go this month in time for the Red Pill Expo, which was supposed to be happening this month, but it got delayed because of COVID-19. Mm-hmm. And so now the book has been sort of delayed, but soon there will be a hard copy book and a downloadable version, as well as an audio book of me just reading them, which I'm still figuring out and getting all lined up and ready to go. So I'm that'll be available soon.
Yeah, and I'll link all this in the info section, but I really highly recommend for people to watch or at least listen to, because the performance is part of it. I remember the first time I heard you, that was in the jungle in Peru when we were 4 years ago.
Oh, wow.
I think we were just coming down off Wachuma too.
Oh, yeah.
And then you're like, hey, I have a little poem I can cite. And you blew everybody's mind. That was awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome. That was a really, validating experience. I had that one poem for about a year, and that's all I would share. And the feedback I got was so good that I finally really just committed to it. I made a commitment to myself to be consistent. And now I didn't want to get too carried away with like expectations of myself. So I just made a commitment to one poem a month.
Yeah.
And I started that in 2017, and I've been doing it ever since. And so now my volume is pretty big.
Yeah.
So I've been able to hold true to that commitment to myself. And, it's awesome. I have a whole body. I wouldn't have expected to be a poet in my mid 30s, but it happened, and I'm really glad that it did.
Yeah. And again, like also what's coming through you, there's something else you're tapping in, and I don't say that lightly. So it's really beautiful, and poetry in itself can like make people understand or create a certain awareness, bypassing the intellect and whatnot. And it's very conscious, also very, current events related, and what else is happening in the world right now. So, let's maybe shift, also bring it to the positive side in terms of what's happening now, because creativity is part of it, right? And I feel like despite all this craziness, and we said before, we can easily get hooked up, doom and gloom. Oh my God, the matrix is coming down, this shit, mandatory vaccinations, 5G, we all fucked, da-da-da. But I sense that there's a silver lining to it all. There's an opportunity right now, which we need to grasp. I know you've gone through a lot of life changes, myself as well. There's something else we can use to create a new world right now, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and I left LA a little over 2 years ago now, and we did it abruptly. My now wife, Sonia, then my girlfriend, we just made the decision. I mean, we were I mean, you remember, like we were looking for a new place to live. We were looking for, some place we could rent, maybe in Topanga, and just kind of, mix things up a little bit, but still stay in Southern California. And then, I don't know, we just had a conversation with someone who kind of just opened up our eyes to a different way of living, and we jumped on it. So we left literally in the middle of the night one night and we bought a truck and loaded up our truck and our car and just left. And it was like ripping off a Band-Aid. We just didn't think about it. We just left. And it's now proving to be the best decision I could have possibly made, because it's just given us so much clarity of thought, like being out of that rat race in LA and being away from the business and being away from my sort of push and pull and of acting and like, is this the right thing? Is this compromising my integrity? But what am I going to do about money? And yada, yada. I was so consumed by that energy that's in LA, that sort of desperate anxiety. And now, I don't know, I'm like much more calm and my ability to think clearly is so much better. And, and the creative juices are flowing much more easily. And it's been a really good couple of years away at getting out of that lifestyle.
Yeah. And I think that's what's happened on a collective level as well. We all I see it more from the spiritual perspective, the divine, that we're also being guided in ways we're not even fully aware of. And even the decisions we make, we think it's our decision, but there's something else actually making, quote unquote, a decision for us in a positive sense. Like you felt that urge, right? Something like, I need to get out of here, And then you have to make that leap of faith and get out of your past programming, the attachment to comfort, security, the matrix programming, basically. Right.
Exactly. And I had that, in about 2013 or 14, I started seeing it almost like a little red light going off in my purview. I knew that my time in LA was coming to an end and I had to get out of there. And I trusted that I would just know when the right time was. And I sort of just accepted that about myself and just knew that this time here was going to be over soon. But it doesn't seem like it's happening anytime, like not immediately, but I'll know it when the moment is right. And it's exactly what happened. That little red light started blinking faster and faster and faster until we finally just left. And now looking back and all that's happened since we left Los Angeles, we did get out just in time for us. I mean, it's not like it's the place has fallen into the ocean or anything, but as far as like just the intensity of the political agenda, I guess, that's just like a virus, no pun intended, spreading through that city in particular. Boy, I'm glad I'm not there to like have to constantly defend my points of view or try to talk to people who are, under the spells that are being broadcast so heavily right now. And it's just like you said, it's on a spiritual level. I made a commitment or a deal with those forces to say, okay, I know I'm not supposed to be here too long, so I trust that you're going to help me leave when it's time. And that's exactly what happened. And boy, I'm glad I did. And I'm so much happier up here.
Yeah, no, beautiful. I mean, as you know, we're out here in Topanga Canyon and we don't have to get into the craziness of LA, but still the energy, we're also considering there's something, growing within us as well. But it's just crazy. Like Laura and I, we just went to Santa Monica the other day. I've been down in years and it's just strange. Still, you have to wear masks and these George Floyd paintings, Black Lives Matters. It's just eerie, you know what I mean? And this undertone, like, you have to watch out not to say the wrong thing. I mean, I literally know of people who have been laid off from a work or fired because they shared this video by, what is this Black Republican woman,
Candace Owens?
Candace Owens, like laying out that George Floyd was not just a nice guy, or anybody who says something against Black Lives Matters, literally being laid off work, right? Being called a racist. It's crazy that this Orwellian thought police that has people taken over, and it's very clear. Again, even not from a partisan perspective, but objectively, the leftist, the Democrat states are, full on taken over by Wetiko, this alien virus, like by some evil force, and creating these almost socialist Orwellian type states. I just told you before we started, Lorna, we just visited Arizona in a little town, and it was awesome. Nobody was wearing masks, no social distancing. I got a haircut, a massage. I was eating, in restaurants. Everybody's having a great time. Nothing. You come back over like this imaginary border, and all of a sudden, boom, you have to go, go back into this quote new normal.
I know, that's crazy. Yeah, we live in one of those blue states, but over here we're in the east side, and it's a lot different than the west side. Mm-hmm. And so we were over in the west side in a town just north of Seattle, and Seattle seems to be the epicenter for so much of this stuff, right? And that's where the coronavirus started. Yeah. That's where this autonomous zone, Chaz, is now set up. And I don't think it's any coincidence that it's in the same city that Microsoft headquarters and Amazon are, but that's just a coincidence. That's a conspiratorial side conversation. But anyway, over there, it was just, you go to the grocery store and everyone's wearing a mask, and people don't realize that this is all consent based. Like, it's what you agree to. I mean, I made a video on my channel a couple weeks ago just telling people, like, if you want to go to Costco where they have mandatory mask wearing and not wear a mask, you don't have to. And here's how, because it's all what you agree to. So we go to these grocery stores out there in the west side of Washington, and everyone's wearing a mask except for Sonia and I. And then we come back over to this part of the state, and it's completely different. And you just see these two worlds. And we go to northern Idaho, which is perhaps the reddest of red states, and it's like nothing happened. There's kids playing in the park, and people playing basketball and walking their dogs and going to cafes and having breakfast. And
nobody getting sick either, by the way.
And what?
Nobody getting sick either.
Yeah. No one's getting sick. No one seems to be that worried about it. Every now and then you see the mask wearing person. That's just the way it is now. But still, it was like the old normal. And it's been really nice.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. But going back to what you shared before, because from this positive perspective, what's happening on the opportunity, like you felt the call. And then within there was also, like you mentioned, this guy, I remember, I forgot his name, this assisting force who helped you kind of like to approach something new. And then that's, I feel, what's happening. If you really answer the call, they're also assisting forces. They help, even within the matrix. That's a big one. That's what goes back to the thing, even within the government, they may be helping forces, because what I see, and I've been in the same mind state too, back, this black and white state, like, oh, this is the matrix and this is good people, this is bad people, right? But I see a lot of support, of help of almost a divine force coming through people who seem to be plugged into the matrix, but helping, you know what I mean? Like, have you experienced that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, when I started on this, I guess, truth-seeking journey, it was because I committed to truth. And that was when I was 21 years old, I think. And that was my commitment. So even when I go to these conferences and stuff that are themed, like Anarchapulco, I've never once said that I'm an anarchist. But I go to that conference because I'm compelled by truth. Right. My allegiance is to truth. And not that I don't identify with some of the anarchist principles, because I do. I mean, I don't really like the word anarchist. I like the word voluntarist, but I don't like labels also. Yeah. But that commitment to truth has just been this guiding force throughout my life, and it keeps me steady. And I think that it depends, whatever you want to call it. If you want to call it God, if you want to call it the universe, if you want to call it something else, I think that's your connection to truth and love. Mm-hmm. And that connection has guided me. And it was before I even knew to call it the universe or God. It was that commitment to truth that led me to even a spiritual path, which is now I'm actually pretty comfortable calling that force God, because it makes it more direct. It feels, I don't know, it feels like now it's an established relationship, where it used to be a little more ambiguous. But I have trust in God, and that is now an anchor for me. And like I have now I have a real active relationship. Whereas it used to be, I was more blindfolded. I was like, I want some, I can feel it, but I don't know what to call it or what it is, because that was my own dogma and my own deprogramming. And now it's very clear, and I trust God in my life. and he's given me every reason to trust him because I'm here now. And and you look in retrospect at all the decisions I've made and all the things that have happened, all the people that have come to my life, it all seems so divine.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because I'm paying attention and I'm having a relationship with it. So yeah, I'm very happy right now. And I'm not like blindly just thinking everything's going to be fine, but I do trust that there's a plan at work, and it's not just QAnon's plan, but there's a plan, and that love, truth, God wins in the end, because how can it not, you know?
Yeah. No, beautiful, very beautifully said. And, and ultimately the God is our essence, your true self. And like, funny you mentioned Q's slogan, trust the plan, which also triggered me because like, it just makes people complacent, but it's not like that. In the end, it's a divine plan. There's something higher, and we still need to participate and play our role. Obviously, we're almost being forced to do it. But you really make a very good point, which also actually I'm addressing in my upcoming article about Q and Trump, that seeking truth is a fluid process. The moment you think, this is the truth, right? This is how everything works, then the matrix has you, right? Because your mind can never fully understand the mystery of life. It's a fluid process. You said you're interested in truth. Same here. And I even know many times in the past, a few times, I had to acknowledge, okay, you know what? I was wrong about this. New insights, new information came in to adjust my views. So it's having this humility to be adjusted, and not getting identified with one thing. Similar, it's funny you mentioned you never labeled yourself as an anarchist, myself included. I remember I was on Jeff's podcast, Anarchist. And he asked me, when did you become, he always asks the guests the question, when do you become an anarchist? And I said, well, I don't identify myself as an anarchist. I value the principles, right? Beautiful. They're like natural law, human, like universal law principles. But it's not that black and white. The moment you just identified with one thing, you already, shut yourself up for any other possibility. Then ego comes in and all of that. But there's something else happening, which is even not in our control anymore. That's the ego wants to be in control. It wants to be right, wants this certain view. And it works in these matrix forces, like I said before, that want to instill in us this like negativity of, almost create the reality for them by instilling us this hopelessness. And you made a really important point. It's about having faith and trust in what's in the bigger process in God. And like I also want to note to the listeners and viewers, ask yourself the question, what is your relationship to God and the divine? Does it trigger you? We're not talking about just some dogmatic outside white guy in the sky who judges, but there's some bigger force, whatever you may call it. What is your relationship to that? And getting out of this victim blame consciousness we're in right now, which I see in the truth movement as well, and take self-responsibility, right? So I'm getting a bit on a rant here, but what you said is very inspiring. It's about like stepping into our own creative power, right? And using the energies to create and build something new.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I've been making the joke recently because when mandatory vaccines, those are real trigger words and they can be kind of scary. But if you think about like what we're up against, if Bill Gates himself were to come to my door with a vaccine in his hand and say, I'm here to mandatorily vaccinate your child, yeah, I would drop this fool. Like, there's no way he'd get into my house. Like, there's no way. This guy has no power. He's not stronger than me. He may have a lot of money, which can afford good PR, which can be effective enough to get people to trust him. But if there's no one to carry out that order, then the order won't get carried out. So we don't have to as long as we have the awareness and we have the resilience and we have this is one thing that Jesus teaches in the Bible, is how to use your language and how to not consent to things. Mm-hmm. How you can, the Bible's an instruction manual. How can you avoid those types of traps just by how you agree or not to, or don't agree to how you're being propositioned. So at this point, it's all still consent-based. And even the idea of a mandatory vaccine, while scary, if you really break it down, I'm not scared of that. I'm not scared of Bill Gates. He's a weak person who has a lot of money and a big throne, but who is he really? And you know what? He's the one who has to live with himself, knowing he's like destroying lives and killing people and mutilating innocent children in other countries already. I wouldn't want that baggage on my soul.
That's quite a karma.
I pity that guy.
Yeah, that's quite a karma to deal with. But you're right. I mean, I've also, a lot of people message me, and we talk about, even on the forum, people, oh my, what's going to happen with mandatory vaccination, this and this. And again, this future projection of all these hypothetical things, which are not real right now in this very moment. So people get into this fear frequency, which actually the matrix forces want you to do, to use your creative energy to almost in a self-fulfilling prophecy to create that what you're afraid of. So fear is the real killer again. Same with COVID and all of that.
Which is exactly what, like you said earlier, one of the traps of the truth movement, the truth community. I find sometimes that the truthers are fear-mongering just as bad as CNN is, and sometimes worse. They're the ones who are promoting such fear, like, this is just the first wave. The second one's going to be this 5G millimeter waves, and people are actually going to get sick, and they're going to be targeted. If you have a Bluetooth in your ear, you're going to get targeted, you're going to drop dead, and blah.
Yes.
Like,
yes.
We're not there. That is so, you're baiting people with fear so hard right now. Don't you see, like, you are that which you are trying to fight against by being such a fear. That was my problem with Alex Jones 15 years ago when I first started being a truth seeker, and I found Alex Jones. And he was just making me feel afraid. And then I'd watch him like David Icke, and he was like, fear is the enemy. And I was like, okay, well, I feel afraid when I watch Alex Jones. So you know what? I'm just going to not watch Alex Jones. And it saved me a lot of stress. Fear is a destroyer. And there's so much fear mongering going on from all sides that you just got to really ground yourself and have patience and move through it.
Exactly.
With eyes wide open.
Yeah, but which also implies we're not now going into the opposite, then taking New Age pill and just thinking love and light and positivity. No, we need to make the shadows need to come out. We need to be aware of it, but don't give your power to it. There's something again bigger happening. Own your own creative power and participate in creating a new world. And especially, again, like what are people doing in their everyday lives? Are you mostly on the internet or media consuming conspiracy theories and whatnot, like an armchair activist? You know what I mean? No change is going to come through that. Yes, inform yourself, but what are you doing in your everyday life to use that? What is your vocation? There's so much opportunity right now.
Exactly. Yeah, it's good to acknowledge the rabbit hole and dabble in it, but don't live in it. Yeah. Don't get stuck down there and just make that your life, because what does that contribute to anything? Yeah.
Beautifully said, Benny. So that's the end of our first hour. Let's take a little break, and then let's dive a bit deeper on what we talked and anything else we can come up with in the flow. But just real quick for the listeners and viewers, how can they find you?
Go to youtube.com/Benny Wills. That's the best place to find me. You can go to bennywills.com, and I feel like I'm the only Benny Wills really out there. So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe another Benny Wills can be like, hey, but on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all that, you can find me. But the main place is youtube.com/Benny Wills.
Excellent. And I will link to it as well. All right. See you in a bit.
Cool.